Continuing our conversation on the progressive movement, as you can see there, a little bit of a brief on Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, and 42 years old, he was actually the youngest president. President Kennedy was the youngest to be elected. The catch there is that President Kennedy was actually elected, whereas Roosevelt became the youngest president because McKinley was assassinated. New nationalism. This was his major goal. This was from a speech that he delivered. Taxes on incomes, corporate businesses, allow for consolidation of trusts and unions, but more regulatory agencies, women's suffrage, and that does not happen though under Roosevelt. Okay, and here is the video that I'm going to ask you to take a look at in just a few minutes. So the election of 1904, not a real big deal there, other than to point out two things. Of course, Roosevelt wins, and Eugene V. Debs was a socialist. He was in jail at the time, but he actually was still on the ballot. And as you can see, he ran for president kind of by default, but gaining about 1 million votes, actually. He was a socialist. 1907 panic. Today we call it depression, economic depression, and as you can see, some major issues there. And a lot of this Roosevelt was blamed for because he went after trusts and did not let the economy run naturally. And a lot of people blamed him for it. So in 1908, he actually decided to let Taft run, and as you can see, he was a handpicked successor. Taft easily defeated William Jennings Bryan, and there you can see once again Debs was in the game, about 400,000 votes. Roosevelt was the first to ride in an automobile. Excuse me, Roosevelt. As you can see, progressives mostly concerned with middle class whites. W.E.B. Du Bois, and of course starts the NAACP. Roosevelt did work with some African Americans. You got Booker T. Washington invited to the White House, and very little, though, other than that. Very little work on the part of Roosevelt and the progressives with African American civil rights. Of course, Jim Crow was still going on, etc. I put this in there to show you a little bit of a background of the time period. This is one of those revolving emails you might get, and you probably hit delete. But I did check some of it, and it is pretty much legitimate. Again, just to kind of give you a little bit of context. Feel free to pause, and you can keep looking, but I'm going to move on. I think you get it. Moving on. So Taft was considered a round peg in a square hole. Secretary of War, General Governor of the Philippines. After President Taft became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the only sitting president to go back or to serve on the Supreme Court after being president. I think this really speaks for itself. You can see Roosevelt looking in the window at the White House and thinking that it's kind of like trying to herd cats. The cats are playing with the yarn, and obviously things are getting all intermixed there, and it's a mess. And that was really Roosevelt's viewpoint of Taft. Taft had actually fired Gifford Pinchot, who was Roosevelt's man, Department of the Interior, etc. Taft, not good to be president, and that's what it refers to. Timid and uncomfortable, had none of the arts of a dashing political leader, and none of Roosevelt's zest for the fray. Poor judge of public opinion, candor made him a chronic victim of foot and mouth disease. Broke up twice as many trusts as Roosevelt. If there is anyone that's the trust buster that you could make a strong argument for, not that you couldn't for Roosevelt, but definitely Tariff. Taft, sorry. And there you can see at the very bottom there the Mann-Elkins Act, and that put the ICC in control of telecommunications. And that is still the case today, that our telecommunications, our cell towers, etc., are all regulated, telegraph, wireless companies, common carriers, etc. So Taft, obviously a very subjective statement to say that he's not a good fit to be president, but in Roosevelt's eye, he really wasn't. Okay. Taft did sign the 16th Amendment into law. Anybody remember what that one was? If you said income tax, you are correct. Dollar diplomacy, and we'll end with this. Dollar diplomacy, I want you to know what this was the idea of putting money into foreign countries and basically beefing up the economy, and in return, the U.S. would cooperate with those countries and work in the economic realm, etc. It was supposed to be a good deal for both sides, and as you can see, pumping a lot of money into these countries throughout the world. And we'll conclude with Taft, pause with Taft for now.